Can one prayer crush Rome's iron fist? Miriam's defiance ignites a village. Lydia's voice trembled. Miriam's a danger. The crowd gasped in shock. Gideon rose, shouting, "Brother, his legs, once lame, stood strong, tearing through Caius's doubt as his sword clattered to the stone." A healer's prayer defies an empire, but can it crush doubt, join Miriam's fight, and discover the miracle that shocked? Dawn broke over Marketplace, its air thick with the tang of salt and fish, spices stinging nostrils as gulls screeched overhead. Dust swirled around stalls, clinging to sweat-soaked robes as merchants shouted their wares. In the crowd's heart, Miriam knelt beside a blind girl, her calloused hands gentle on the child's trembling shoulders. Her eyes, warm yet burdened, gazed beyond flesh to soul. The Roman garrison's stone walls loomed nearby, a silent threat under the blazing sunrise. Miriam's voice rose, steady as a beacon. She prayed, quoting sacred words, "O Lord my God, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me," from Psalm 30, verse 2. Her hands glowed with faith, and the girl's eyelids fluttered. A gasp rippled through the crowd as the child's eyes opened, clear and bright, locking onto her mother's tear-streaked face. "I see," she cried, her voice a spark in the morning heat. The crowd surged, some cheering, others whispering in awe, their sandals scuffing the grit. A mother wept, clutching her daughter, while a fisherman raised his hands, praising fervently. A shadow fell. The Roman official strode forward, his polished armour glinting, his face carved with scorn. His boots crunched the earth, each step a challenge. The crowd parted, their murmurs fading, eyes shadowed by buried grief for his brother, lost to war, fixed on Miriam. A trick to defy Rome, he snarled fiercely, his voice cutting like a blade. "Your God is a fable, healer." The air tightened as if the sea held its breath. A merchant shrank back, but the blind girl's mother stood firm, her eyes defiant. Miriam rose, her robes fluttering in the breeze, her gaze unflinching. "The Lord's light shines for all," she said softly, yet unyielding. "Will you see it?" The crowd stirred, some nodding, others shrinking from glare. Among them, a Jewish elder with a furrowed brow and envious heart leaned toward, his whisper sharp as a dagger. "She stirs rebellion, Lord," he hissed, his eyes darting to Miriam, lips twitched, a predator scenting prey. The garrison's shadow darkened, its walls closing in. A widowed merchant in fine linen watched from her stall, her hands twisting a cloth. Her wealth, hard won after her husband's death for his faith, anchored her life. Yet Miriam's courage stirred her soul, even as fear gnawed. Could she risk all for this healer? Her eyes met Miriam's, a fleeting connection, but doubt clouded her heart. The crowd's cheers faded as raised a hand, silencing them. "Prove your God again," he mocked, "or Rome will judge you." He turned, his cloak snapping, leaving a chill in his wake. Miriam stood alone as the crowd dispersed, her heart a storm of faith and doubt. She slipped into a shadowed alley, the garrison's walls looming like her fears. Kneeling, she clutched her mother's pendant, its edges worn from years of prayer. Her mind flashed to a childhood memory, her mother, a healer, dragged away by Romans whispering, "Trust the Lord." Miriam. Tears pricked her eyes, the salt air stinging her lips. "Am I worthy, Lord?" she murmured, her voice cracking. The distant sea roared, a restless echo of her soul, yet a fire kindled within, small but fierce. She rose, eyes fixed on the horizon, where scheme brewed unseen. The village had seen a miracle, but a storm was rising. Have you ever faced a skeptic's scorn like Miriam did? Share your story in the comments and let us see how faith shines through doubt. Betrayed by her own, can Miriam's prayer pierce the darkness? The midday sun scorched, but the alley behind the synagogue offered no relief. Lamp smoke choked the air, curling around crumbling walls as Miriam knelt, her sandals grinding grit into her knees. His whispered plot with echoed of venom seeping into the village's heart. His hesitant glance in the marketplace lingered in Miriam's mind, a crack in their bond. The healer's resolve, forged in dawn's miracle, trembled under the weight of betrayal. Miriam's hands clasped her mother's pendant, its warmth a tether to faith. She prayed softly, quoting Psalm 23, verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. The words steadied her, but memories surged her mother's face. Serene as soldiers bound her, whispering the same verse. Miriam's breath hitched, a sob swallowed. Footsteps broke the alley's silence. Appeared, her linen robes pristine, but her eyes shadowed. Miriam, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk. His hands twisted, betraying her turmoil. My husband died for his faith, she said, words tumbling like stones. He left me nothing but this trade. Now I risk it all for you. Her voice cracked, revealing the widow's fear, her stall, her shield against ruin. Miriam's heart ached, yet she stood firm. The Lord provides, she said gently. Will you trust him? His eyes darted away, guilt etching her face. A shout shattered the moment. A young believer with fire in his eyes stumbled into the alley, his tunic torn. Miriam, run, he gasped, blood trickling from a scraped arm. Swith, they plan to arrest you. His words cut short as he tripped, his sandal catching a stone. Soldiers' boots echoed nearby, their armour clanking like a death knell. Miriam pulled behind a crate, her pulse racing. The soldiers passed, their torches casting fleeting shadows. But danger lingered. In the marketplace stood on a crate, his voice booming. Miriam's miracles are heresy, he declared, his beard quivering with feigned rage. The crowd stirred, some shouting agreement, others murmuring doubt. A mother clutched her healed daughter, the blind girl, her eyes wide with fear. His words fanned the mob's anger, a spark threatening to ignite. She defies our law, he roared, pointing to the garrison, watched from its steps, his smirk a blade unsheathed. Miriam, hidden, heard the mob's roar. Her hands trembled, but her mother's voice echoed, trust the Lord. She closed her eyes, praying, Lord, thy purpose guides me. The words, like a shield, calmed her storm, whispered, we'll fight for you. Miriam shook her head. Faith, not fists, she said, her eyes fierce. The alley's smoke stung her throat, yet resolve burned brighter. His betrayal had lit a fire, but a greater light was coming. The mob's cries faded, but danger loomed. Would you stand by a friend accused of heresy like Miriam was? Comment below and share what you would do in her place. A hidden prayer sparks hope. Will it shatter Miriam's fears? Dawn painted seashore in streaks of pink, waves crashing against rocky cliffs with a roar that drowned the gulls' cries. Salt air bit Miriam's lips, wet sand clinging to her bare feet as she knelt, her robes damp from the tide. His heresy charge had turned neighbours into foes, and his wavering words cut deeper than any blade. Yet the blind girl's grateful smile lingered, a flicker of God's promise in the darkness. Miriam's hands dug into the sand, her voice rising above the sea. Lord, each dawn is gift. She prayed, her heart full of gratitude. Show me path. Her pendant gleamed, a reminder of her mother's sacrifice. The waves answered, their rhythm a pulse of hope. Footsteps crunched behind her, stood, her face etched with guilt, a scroll clutched in her trembling hands. "I found this in the synagogue," she whispered, eyes downcast. "It belongs to your mother." Miriam's breath caught as she unrolled the parchment. Its ink faded, but words alive. "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." It read Psalm 46, verse 1, in her mother's hand, her eyes blurred with tears, and the scroll felt like a divine embrace. "She prayed this before they took her," Miriam murmured, her voice thick, knelt beside her, tears falling. "I doubted you," she confessed softly, "but this is a sign." The sea roared, affirming their bond. From a cliff above, watched, his armour dull in the dawn light. His hand rested on his sword, but his thoughts drifted to his brother, lost years ago in a skirmish, or so he believed. A villager's tale of Miriam's healing stirred his grief, a crack in his skeptic's heart. His eyes lingered on the scroll, doubt flickering across his face. He turned away, but the sea's roar followed, challenging his certainty. Limped toward Miriam, his arm bandaged, his eyes fierce despite pain. "Soldiers are closing in," he warned, his voice hoarse. "Flee, Miriam." But Miriam stood, the scroll in hand, her face radiant. "Faith will move mountains," she said, quoting Matthew 17, verse 20. The blind girl appeared, her mother trailing, her voice clear. "You gave me sight," she said, hugging Miriam. "Don't give up." The child's warmth was a fire, banishing Miriam's fear. The sea glittered, dawn's light a promise. Miriam clutched the scroll, her resolve iron. Trap was tightening, but a greater power stirred. Has a sign like Miriam's scroll ever renewed your faith? Share your moment in the comments and let us light the world together. Betrayed and cornered, can Miriam's prayer defy death? The midday sun scorched village square, its glare bouncing off Roman banners that flapped like vultures' wings. A wooden platform loomed at the centre, surrounded by a seething crowd, their murmurs thick with dust and fear. Sweat beaded on faces, a mother's sob cut through a merchant's jeer. Miriam stood on the platform, her robes tattered, her hands bound, but her eyes unyielding. The garrison's stone walls glowered behind, throne of judgment atop its steps. Its heresy charge and wavering had lit a fuse, and now the mob burned with division. Some wept for Miriam, others bayed for blood. Rose, his armour clanking, his voice a blade. "Miriam, you stirred treason with your tricks," he bellowed, pointing to the crowd. "Renounce your God or face Rome's fire." The mob roared, their sandals stamping clouds of grit. Smirking from the platform's edge, fanned the flames. "Her miracles are blasphemy," he shouted fiercely, his beard quivering with zeal. "She defies our law." A fisherman spat in scorn, but the blind girl's mother clutched her daughter, her eyes wide with hope, whispering, "She's no heretic." Stood among the crowd, her linen robe stained with sweat, her hands twisting. The memory of her husband's martyrdom for faith clawed at her heart, yet threat to seize her stall, her widow's lifeline, choked her courage. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Miriam's a danger," she cried, the words bitter with guilt. The crowd gasped, shock rippling through them. Miriam's eyes met, not with anger, but sorrow, as if seeing the widow's fear. A tear traced his cheek, but she turned away, guilt a weight she could not shed. All bound and bruised, knelt at the platform's base, soldiers' spears at his back. His scraped arm bled, but his voice rang out. "The Lord is with her," he shouted defiantly. A soldier's fist silenced him, blood trickling from his lip. Yet the crowd stirred, some chanting Miriam's name. eyes narrowed, his hand gripping his sword, but doubt flickered across his face. His lost brother haunted his thoughts. Smirk faltered, the mob's division unnerved him. Miriam lifted her chin, her voice cutting through the chaos. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? She declared, quoting Psalm 27 verse 1. Her words, steady as stone, hushed the crowd. Thunder rumbled, storm clouds gathering, their shadows racing across the square. The air crackled as if the heavens watched. Miriam's heart pounded, yet her mother's scroll burned in her memory. God's refuge, her strength. She prayed silently. Lord, guide me through this fire. The crowd held its breath, torn between Rome's might and a healer's faith. A storm was breaking and a trap was set. Who is the real enemy here? Or comment your take below, and let us unravel this clash of faith and power. A lost brother rises. Will this miracle shatter Rome's heart? The afternoon sky over square churned with storm clouds, lightning splitting the heavens as rain pelted the crowd. Thunder shook the wooden platform where Miriam stood, her bound hands raised, her robe soaked, but her face radiant. The mob's cries faded, their eyes locked on her. A beacon in the tempest, atop the garrison steps, gripped his throne, his armour slick with rain. His betrayal and his accusations had cornered Miriam, yet defiance and the blind girl's hope lingered, sparks in the gathering dark. Sneered, his voice booming over the storm. Prove your God, healer, he mocked, gesturing to a lame beggar dragged forward by soldiers. Heal this wretch, or burn the beggar, cloaked in rags, limped onto the platform, his face hidden by a hood. The crowd murmured, some jeering, others praying, and outside scoffed. Her God fails her, now he taunted, his eyes darting nervously to the sky, as still bound, whispered softly, Lord, show them. Miriam knelt before the beggar, her hands trembling with faith, not fear. If you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, she prayed, quoting Matthew 17 verse 20, nothing shall be impossible. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face, serene as her mother's in memory. She touched the beggar's legs, her voice rising, in the Lord's name, rise. The crowd gasped as the beggar's hood fell, revealing a scarred face. Brother, presumed dead in a distant war, his eyes wide with shock. Met, brother, he cried, his voice raw. His legs straightened, trembling but strong. He stood, then walked, his arms outstretched, shouting, the Lord lives. The crowd erupted, some falling to their knees, others weeping. Rain washed their faces, mingling with tears, stumbled forward, her voice breaking. Miriam, I betrayed you, she sobbed, collapsing at the healer's feet. Forgive me. Miriam lifted her, embracing her tightly, whispering, the Lord forgives, and so do I. The crowd's chants grew. Miriam, Miriam, their voices drowning the thunder. Staggered, his sword clattering to the stone. His face, alive and whole, tore through his doubt. He clutched his chest, memories flooding his laughter, their boyhood, his presumed grave, backed away, his smirk gone, his accusations dust in the storm. The blind girl's mother raised her hands, praising, God's light shines. Miriam, unbound by a soldier's trembling hand, prayed aloud, Lord, purpose shines through every storm. The rain slowed, a shaft of light piercing the clouds, bathing the square in gold. A miracle had changed everything, but heart teetered. What miracle has changed your heart? Share your story below, and let us celebrate God's power together. Can a skeptic's heart turn? Light burns eternal sunset, cast a golden glow over seashore, torches crackling along sandy dunes where a prayer circle gathered. Waves lapped gently, their rhythm a hymn of peace, the salt air clinging to skin. Stars twinkled above, as if heaven joined the song. Miriam stood at the circle's heart, her robes clean, her face serene, her mother's scroll tucked against her chest. His miracle had stunned the village, his redemption had knit their bond anew, and defiance had lit a fire, yet shadow loomed, his heart a final frontier. The community sang, their voices weaving a melody raw with joy and tears. Miriam raised her hands, proclaiming, "I am the light of the world," quoting John 8, verse 12. "He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." The words, like embers, warmed the dusk. Beside her glowed with resolve, her wealth pledged to build a church. His arm healed by Miriam's prayer, stood tall, his eyes bright. Reconciled with his brother, joined the circle, his voice strong. The blind girl and her mother sang, their faces radiant. Footsteps crunched on sand, approached, his armour shed, his tunic plain. The crowd hushed, hands tightening. He held the scroll, its edges worn, his fingers tracing its words. "Your peace," he said, his voice low. "I have never known it." His eyes met Miriam's, not with scorn, but searching. "Does your God hear even a Roman?" The question hung, fragile as torchlight. Miriam smiled, her voice gentle. "Come unto him and find rest," she said, quoting Matthew 11, verse 28. The crowd exhaled, some nodding, others wary. Stepped forward, his head bowed, his beard streaked with dust. "I was blind, but now I see," he confessed, his voice cracking. "Forgive me, Miriam." The crowd murmured, some gasping, others praising. Miriam took his hands, her eyes warm. "The Lord forgives, as do I." The circle widened, embracing him, their hymns swelling, knelt in respect, freeing with a nod. Embraced him, tears falling, their bond a quiet miracle. Miriam looked to the stars, her heart full. "I doubted," she whispered, "but God's light never fades." The narrator's voice, warm as a pastor's, rose. "Each dawn is a gift, a call to trust God's purpose." Miriam's prayer lit. What will yours light? The torches flared, their glow a beacon. The screen faded, words lingering. Share your faith story to light the world just as Miriam did. The hymn echoed, a promise of hope eternal. Shone, but your light awaits. Share your faith story to light the world just as Miriam did, and let us spark a movement together.